Welcome to PRAJNA SPARKS Special Series 59 Days of Healing, where we explore one maxim from the Tibetan Lojong text, 7 points for healing dualistic mind, each day to integrate the practice into our lives. Today is day 54. We are working with point 7 tips. Maxim 54 reads, train wholeheartedly. I always think of this maxim as kind of the flip side of yesterday's. Number 53, give up inconstancy. So giving up inconstancy is talking about it from the perspective of what to stop doing, being inconsistent. And maxim 54 is talking about it from the perspective of what to do. So what to do and to not do. Seems very dualistic, but what the frame of all of these maxims is doing is trying to get us out of even that habit. Just because there are two options listed doesn't mean it's necessarily dualistic. Our minds will definitely tend in that direction because of the habit of dualistic perception. But we can look at these two maxims or any two things as two spheres which define a space and then see how they overlap or coalesce and so forth. When we look at it that way, we can see that these two maxims really help in different circumstances. Sometimes we are feeling a little down or a little sad. The sense of being wholehearted can be very uplifting and positive and helpful in those situations. Sometimes we know we're just not with it, not on the ball, and we want to change. In that sense, giving up inconstancy might be a rallying call that helps us to move forward. Either way, what these maxims are trying to say is to experience that sense of being consistent and fluid in a way that is more holistic, more organic and natural than this sort of whipping ourselves into shape or forcing ourselves to do something. I especially love the word wholehearted in this maxim. When was the last time you did anything wholeheartedly because you forced yourself to? Nothing ever happens wholeheartedly because you're being forced by yourself or somebody else. Things happen wholeheartedly because we understand the value for us. We may have a job we're not crazy about, and yet we put ourselves to work day after day without missing a beat. Why? Because we recognize the value of that job. Our family depends on us. We need to have a roof over our head. We need food. We commit ourselves to do it. This maxim is saying, use that same sense and expand it out even further. When we're talking about Dharma practice generally, or the practice of healing dualistic mind in particular, the more we know about its benefits, how it helps us, what the advantages are of engaging in the practice and what the disadvantages are of not engaging in the practice, the more mind just naturally inclines towards the practice. Mind's such a tricky thing. There's no way to push it into something it doesn't want to do, but it is smart. It follows the lead of reason. So there are many ways to have a sense of what the benefits are of a practice and what the disadvantages are. When we're starting out, it's good to hear teachings or talk to a spiritual friend, read texts that say, well, this is what happens. This is how it can be from the other side. This practice of Lojong is a favorite of many longtime Dharma practitioners. You can find many books from people's experience with this practice, in particular, Ani Pema Chödrön, who is just a sterling example of a Dharma practitioner in modern life, has many, many books on this practice. That's a good way at the beginning to understand what the benefits are of a practice and the disadvantages of not having the practice. Often just reading these books brings us into a space of joy and enthusiasm and gives us a feeling of what it's like to be wholeheartedly interested in a practice. The more we do it, then the more we write that story. The more we know the advantages and the disadvantages when we don't do it. We know how it feels when we're consistent with it and how it feels when we're not. This is why you can't make a mistake, because even out of the places where we let the practice slip for any number of reasons, we learn from that. That's something that fuels our understanding of the disadvantages when we don't have that practice at our fingertips. So, training wholeheartedly in this particular maxim is not saying to force yourself. It's not saying to talk yourself into it. It's saying find ways to connect with the lived experience of this practice, first through other people, and then increasingly through our own experience, and really take it in. Really feel what it's like when we're on a roll with this practice and imagine where that might lead us. That kind of creative process will allow us to be a lot more natural and organic in our growth into the practice. It'll be wholehearted right where we are today, wholehearted right where we are tomorrow, and so on. From today to tomorrow to the next day, next month, next year, next life, our practice grows and grows.
The proof is in the pudding. It's about trying it and seeing. One of the things I realize about some of the notions about Dharma from, before I started to practice, or even as I initially encountered things, some things seemed restrictive, don't do this and don't do that. And, even the idea of cloister, sort of cutting yourself off from the world for some period of time seems restrictive. And I think it was important for me to, some of it hear from others about how it was helpful to them, but even more so to find out for myself upon trying it how joyfully I can restrict myself, and how that not doing some things deepens other things, and how there's a real interplay between that. And I feel like there have been a number of the maxims that have been about that, not doing so much of one thing so you can do more of another thing, and really learning from trying it and from experimenting with it. And I think that the wholeheartedness would be very difficult to do just from the idea of Dharma, but from the actual practice of it and trying it out, I think it's much easier to step into it more fully.
Yes, this is definitely a maxim that kind of arcs back onto itself, because the way to train wholeheartedly is to train wholeheartedly. It's really, there's no way to get this across to somebody other than to say, the more you do it, the more it makes sense. The more there's a natural admiration, interest, and inclination for the practice that just continues to build. All Dharma practice is meant to really connect with truths that are not out there somewhere. Impermanence, suffering, non-self, nirvana. These are the 4 hallmarks of the Buddha's teachings. And the Buddha, being the sublime teacher and leader of beings that he is, starts with the easiest to connect with, impermanence. Sure, subtle levels of impermanence are not that easy to connect with, but we can see the seasons, we can see the days and the nights, we can see ourselves aging. We have a foothold with impermanence. Then we go deeper and deeper into that, and we can move on to the next one, which is trickier. So anicca and then dukkha. Dukkha has many levels of subtlety, but it helps ease us into anatman, non-self, the trickiest of those 3. And that just leads naturally to the practices that open out into nirvana. All of the practices are already wholehearted, wholeness, waiting for us to encounter and step into it. As soon as we do that, the practice takes over and we become a part of this enormous whole heart of Dharma.
This has been Yeshe and Tanya on day 54 of PRAJNA SPARKS special series, 59 Days of Healing. Tune in daily for more maxims from the Tibetan Lojong text, 7 Points for Healing Dualistic Mind. Check the episode notes for more resources, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at PRAJNA SPARKS, and email us, sparks@prajnafire.com with any questions. May all beings benefit.